Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
I may have shared this story somewhere along the way, but for those who don't know, I used to be, I have a law degree. I was a tax attorney, a tax consultant, worked with one of the big 6 accounting firms. And they have all sorts of different events, and you get to sit around and meet the higher-ups. And I remember at one point being at a holiday party, perhaps, or it was something a little formal, being at a table with a bunch of younger people like me with one of the older partners, and he kind of challenged us, what's the best way to get work from your clients, and we're all trying to be very impressive and, good price, quality, blah, 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 blah. And he just said, do good work. That was his response, which in a way was, okay, yeah, I think I kind of said that maybe, but that has always stuck with me. But today's guest is a returning guest, Stacy Brown Randall, and she's releasing a book, or has released a book by the time this has come out, the Referable Client Experience. Stacy was a guest back in early 2021, and we re-released that episode in March of this year as episode 277. If you want to go back and look at it, but we talked to her the first time about her book, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. And so she's got this new book coming out and wanted to talk with her. She is I'm kind of a networking person. I talk about referrals. She's a referral person. It's, I don't know how you cover all that ground or find things to talk about, but you do. But anyhow, welcome.
Thank you so much, Frank, for having me back. I'm excited to be here again.
No, this is good. So I guess tell me about the book, define client experience. You heard my story. And one of the things you have said is as well, it's more than just doing good work.
Right. Yeah. What's interesting? This is something I actually usually ask people. And I think your story fits so perfectly into our conversation because I think for a really long time, and I think it's still very prevalent today, there is this belief that if you just do great work, you're going to naturally get all of these referrals. And my question is always to folks, do you think you do great work? And most of the time they nod their heads, right? They're like, yeah, I think I do great work. Like, yeah. We're not perfect, but when things go wrong, we solve the problem and we give the clients what they're looking for. And, we meet their expectations. We exceed their expectations. Yes, we're valuable. We do great work. And then my second question is always, awesome. Are you drowning in referrals? And the answer is 99.9% of the time, no.
Yeah,
I am not. So, but the thought process has always been, we'll just do great work and you'll get referrals. But yet we're all doing great work and we're not drowning in referrals. And so the question I usually get from folks is like, well, am I doing something wrong? I'm like, probably not, but you're definitely missing out on things you should be doing. So you're not doing anything wrong. You're just not doing all the things you need to do if you want to have a referable client experience and then be able to bridge that gap to referrals.
I mean, it makes sense. I'm going to equate it to driving. You never have a police officer pull you over and say that was just the perfect right-hand, turn, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
And my point is that doing good work, it should be expected.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Now I know we can all point to that person who doesn't do good work, and those are probably the exceptions and not the rule. But you're right. Most people are either doing good work, or they are, or deluded in their thoughts about what good work is. And that's entirely possible, because nobody's gonna, occasionally you have somebody who will sit you down and say, I was really disappointed in the effort. But then you have the effort to recover, or maybe not, but at least then But I don't know, statistics out there, 90% of the people aren't going to say something. They're just going to move on or suffer.
Yeah, I think what people don't realize too is that sometimes when a client doesn't have the great experience you want them to have, it actually doesn't come down to anything you did or didn't do. It actually comes down to that you failed to set the expectation with what it was going to be like.
Yeah.
Because once you set the expectation with me as to what it's going to be like to work with you, then I don't make assumptions and I don't assume it's going to be easier or harder or better or faster, right? And I kind of just know like, oh, okay, this is how it works. This is what it looks like. Like they told me to expect this, so we must be right on track.
Yeah. Okay. All these people are doing great work, and let's assume for the moment they are doing great work because most people do. Most people and meet their expectation. 99.99, to quote you,
Right.
are not getting referrals. I'm sure that's very scientific, but I'll go with it. And I believe it, right? Even when people ask us for referrals, we don't. But so people aren't getting referrals and they're asking you what's missing. And okay, what is kind of missing? In your book, you talk about the three stages of the client experience. So if you want to,
Yeah. So, and here's what I would say. Most people are going to probably be getting some referrals, right? The question is, are you drowning in them, right? Are you getting more than you can handle? And very few business owners can say yes to that. And so when we think about the client experience, like, so, when you first had me on your podcast to talk about my first book, I may have said this because I had to say it a lot in the beginning, but people would say, okay, great. I've read your book. Now I know how to get referrals, right? Like, is this what it looks like? Is this how I go forward? And I would always say, the first book tackles getting referrals from people who already refer you.
mm-hmm,
And when I teach that strategy, like, hey, you've got people referring you, so let's get more referrals from them. When I teach that strategy, I always had this big disclaimer that I would start with, which is, okay, I'm going to teach you how to get more referrals from the people already referring you. And I'm making a really big assumption, which is I'm assuming you're referable.
mm,
Well, over time, it became one of those things I'm like, I actually probably need to teach people how to be referable. So that statement is always true. So it's one of my three foundational strategies that I teach to all of my clients. But it's also one of the more recent strategies that I have put in place for my clients to go through and understand. This is one that we started teaching in late 2020 because I realized I was like, wait, I'm assuming people know what it means to be referable and they don't. And then we're missing opportunities. And I don't have anything that they're doing in that client experience that's allowing me to bridge them to referrals. So we have to do two parts here, right? So when you think about your client experience and you think about the three stages of your client experience, some businesses have three and some only have two. So that's the first thing for companies to kind of pay attention to as the business owner. Like you got to figure out, do you have three stages or two stages? Three stages mean they're new. Everybody has the new client stage. A client says yes to working with you. They're in the buyer's journey. They come out of the buyer's journey with a decision to say yes to working with you. At that moment, your client experience begins. It does not include the buyer's journey. That's a different journey. The client experience starts from the minute they say yes. And every client moves into what the new client stage. How long that stage lasts is completely indicative on your business and your flow and your industry and how things look and feel for you as a business owner. But once they come out of the new stage, all clients then move into the active stage. And the active stage is where most of the work gets done. Now, if your clients are supposed to stay with you forever, like a CPA, you want to file my
yeah,
taxes every year, you never want me to
yeah,
leave, then I'm going to stay in the active stage, which is going to, after that first year, probably become what we would refer to more as the ongoing active stage. But if the work you do with me ends, right? So I think about my clients in my coaching programs, when they're done coaching with me and they're done, they move from active to alumni. And I specifically refer to my clients as alumni clients, and I encourage people to refer to their past clients as alumni clients because you will automatically think of them differently when you think of clients as alumni. You'll think about staying in touch with them the way a school stays in touch with their alumni. You'll think about staying in touch with them, which gives you that opportunity to continue to communicate and also be able to continue to receive referrals. So those three stages are really important for people to recognize where they are within the work that they do with their clients, like where they start and where do they stop, and what does it look like as clients move through those three stages.
Okay, so to clarify, somebody like an accountant only really has two stages because it's new or active, hopefully. They might have some alumni.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
well, people don't stay forever. So they
sure,
probably, like, if somebody sold their business and they
yeah,
didn't need the accountant anymore, then obviously that would become an alumni client.
sure.
Um, But we think about this in terms of because how you think about that active stage and how you take care of your clients. If you're only going to be with me for 6 weeks, 6 months, a year or two, and then you're done, I'm going to look at that active stage differently than if I have to repeat that active stage every single year, the way a bookkeeper, CPA, financial
Yeah.
advisor would.
I mean, it's to me, this is interesting because I used to practice law. I was in private practice, but I started out in public accounting. And in public accounting, you had the new and then it was the active, right? It was ongoing. And then, okay, get another year. We need to do a tax return. We need to do
Right.
planning. Just ongoing. But when I became this attorney, I didn't have that recurring work. I did a lot of business stuff, and I would somewhat joke about it. Although it was scary, that if I did my job right, I would never see my client again. Meaning,
Right.
I set them up, I helped them buy a business, set it up the right way. They shouldn't have any problems. I'm going to have to go find another client.
Yeah.
I never, I don't want to say they were dead to me, um, but I never really thought about, okay, this is somebody that I should be um, continuing to cultivate a relationship with. Because for me, it was they're not going to need me. I need to go find people who need me.
Yeah, I mean, and there like a lot of us have that type of mentality at some point, right? And if they don't ever need to come back to you, right? So I think there's a couple of different ways to look at the alumni stage. There are some that when a client finishes with you, they may need you in a couple of years. So
Sure.
staying connected to them is really important because they are the ability to come back and be a repeat client. And or right, they may just have that opportunity to refer business to you. And so if you forget about them, then they're going to forget about you, and it's a lot harder for
Yeah.
them to actually think about referring you. And then in some cases, right, when people like exit that alumni stage and they're like, they're the circumstances are different. They may never become a client again. They may never refer again, right? At some point, you do have to take people out of that alumni stage, depending on how you've built out that stage.
No, I mean, again, it makes sense. It makes sense, and I did have people who would come back out of the woodwork and want to work with me. I think, and I guess you can opine on this. It's much easier now with LinkedIn and email because when I started practicing law, I was in 1995.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I had a database. I didn't, it wasn't very huge because I was just starting in private practice. I didn't follow up with people. It didn't make sense to follow up with people again because I'm looking for the new clients. And there was a lot of, if you will, friction to staying in touch. Okay, I've got to write something. I've got to print it. I've got to fold it. I got to put it in an envelope. I got to mail it, right? I know you laugh, but that's where it was.
Which is so funny that you say that there's a lot of friction to it. Now it's so much easier just to email and text, except email and text don't actually get anyone's attention anymore. Now the
Yeah.
the mailing of the card, right, is the thing
Yes.
that will actually get people's attention, which used to be the only thing we could do.
Yeah. Well, what I advocate for people to do, I was talking to a financial advisor. She asked me, she reached out, hey, would you give me 10 minutes of your time? I'm just lost on what I should be doing. And one of her questions was, should I be writing notes? How should I be following up with people?
Mm,
And the first, I've got a big database of people. Yeah, don't do the mail merge thing because it's very, very efficient, but it's not effective. People, people are smart. They can sniff that out in a minute. This is a mail merge. You're better off to maybe do 50 clients a week and go through and just devote some time to saying, hey, how was your golf trip or whatever that the stuff about them that you really can't include in a mail merge sort of a thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's effective. It's efficient, but it's not effective because you sort of lose people. Um,
right. It's funny when I was writing the book, I was like, we're gonna have a whole chapter
mhm.
on efficiency versus engagement. And by the time the editors were like done with it, they're like, that's a paragraph. And I was like,
Oh,
but people need to understand. They're like, yeah. And the way you explain it is really well written and it only needs a paragraph to understand the difference between being efficient and the automation piece versus having that engagement and more of a high touch. But I think it is something that people struggle with and have to be reminded about. Like I always know when a client comes to me and they're like, "Hey, can you write us a 12 point email drip campaign that we can send out to our clients or our prospects or referral sources that'll get them to refer to us?" And I'm like, "No, I cannot because that's not how it works."
Yeah.
Like I know you want it to be that easy and it to be like that automated, and I get that you're completely and totally looking for the easy button. But that's not actually what drives people to refer. So that's not going to
Yeah.
work. So I'm not going to do it.
Well, I think there's an indirect relationship between easy and effective, right? I mean, it, everybody can send emails out. So if you want me to put that easy button email together, it's just not going to be effective. Happy to do it, but it's just not going to be effective. And you're not going to be happy with me because it's not going to work.
Right.
So pitfalls. What are some common pitfalls that people should try to avoid in this whole process?
Yeah, I think the thing that people have to pay attention to is remember the client experience is defined as how your client feels while working with you. So the results that you get is only a part of the equation in terms of how they feel. It is also based on the relationship that you are building with them. So when you're thinking through your client experience, it's really important to pay attention that this is the suggestions that I give are all based on how the client is feeling and you being able to meet your client where they are. So in the new client stage, the number one pitfall people have to pay attention to is what I call addressing the quiet voice. It's all the things your client is thinking that they are concerned about or wondering about or making assumptions on, and they're not saying any of it to you. But it is slowly eroding their trust in you and it's slowly making them wonder if they made the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you know your client is going to be having these quiet voice conversations with themselves that they're never going to talk to you about, it's all about like acknowledging it in that moment and being like, okay, so we know that this is happening, so let's address it from that perspective. And the one way that I tell folks to be able to address it is by labeling it and calling it out and being like, so let me give you an example. So when I was a productivity coach and I would be working with small business owners, the number one thing they had to understand is that working with me meant there was work to do and it was going to challenge them and stretch them and they're going to have to do things. This wasn't like you hire me and then all your problems are solved. This was you hire me and then we work through solving all your problems and then your problems are solved as long as you keep it going what you learned.
Yeah.
And so I knew that when they hired me, I knew the concern was going to be like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to do this? And is this going to be more than I can handle? So I always acknowledged and addressed the quiet voice through the card that I wrote to my clients when they first signed on with me. And so, a card doesn't take much energy to write, but it's that idea of showing up to them. And I didn't just write a card that says, I'm so glad you're a client of mine. Thanks so much for the opportunity to work with you. Because that card is all about me. That has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
But addressing the quiet voice in that card, right, was more about what I refer to as the journey card. Like, let's just acknowledge the journey we're about to go on. So I would say, thank you so much for I would say, thank you so much for the opportunity to work with you. I know as we go through this journey and working with me, it's going to stretch and challenge you. That's okay. That's normal. Just remember, you're not on this journey alone. I am your co-pilot. It was a very simple card to write, but in that moment, whereas it wasn't work I was doing for them, that was relationship building I was doing for them, meeting them where they are and addressing what their concerns are. So now I've labeled it, I've acknowledged it, now I've normalized it.
Right.
Now it's like, oh, I'm feeling this way, and that's normal. That's actually not a reflection on Stacy, or if I made the right decision. That's a reflection on this is what I'm doing, and this is normal to feel this way.
Yeah, it reminds me when I was in business school, they found that what was it called? There was a whole study, realistic job preview. That if you sat down when they were onboarding employees, if you sat down and basically told them, hey, there are parts of this that are just going to be horrible, or whatever, whatever, I've got other words for that, and every job's got those things, right? Not
every job.
Yeah. That people had higher job satisfaction because the expectation was set. you know what, you're going to be doing a lot of cold calling. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be everything, but it'll be miserable. But, and those people would be like, okay. Whereas when they didn't do those sorts of things, then people would, oh my God, I can't believe this. This is horrible. But when you tell them it's horrible, it's okay. Yeah. So I love it.
It comes for us to accept it and understand it and know that it's ultimately there. And that's really
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
Okay. See, that's with the new. What about the active and the alumni?
Yeah. So with the active stage, that's where you have to face the lull of complacency. That's where the most of the work is happening for you as the business owner, with you and your team, right? You're doing the majority of the client work in the active stage, but they're not seeing it. You're so close to it. You're seeing it unfold. You're seeing it happen, but they're not necessarily close to it unless you need something for them or there's like a meeting they're supposed to attend. And so what I tell folks is pay attention to, like, you're lulled into complacency of feeling like everything's good because I'm doing all this work. Except for the client, they, like, in theory, they know you're doing all this work, but in reality, when they haven't heard from you for a couple of weeks, they're not actually sure what's happening. And the assumption that they're going to start making is that you've forgotten about them, which is, like, of course, not true, right? It's just, right. So some of this is how we actively communicate when there's nothing to communicate, right? The other part of this is acknowledging that if your clients are ever going to enter a time where they're playing the waiting game and they're waiting on you, you need to have something that addresses that waiting game. And it can be something that is like, hey, like, we know you're in this wait, like you're waiting for your new website and you're super excited and we can't wait to show it to you. And there's still time to go before it's ready to show it to you. So, in the meantime, have a cup of coffee on us while you sit back and wait and just know you're in great hands, right? Something simple as that. Or it could be something more complicated. But again, it does the same thing the journey card did, which is acknowledging what they are going through. And recognizing this is for what it is and saying that, and then trying to make it a little fun with something extra that's nice. Like, so I work with a number of folks in the professional services and creative industries. And one of those industries is interior designers. And when I'm working with interior designers, one of the things I always tell them about their client experience is the minute you've shown them what this beautiful design is going to look like is like the last moment of joy for your client until they see it done. And everything in between is chaos because the kitchen's completely being remodeled. It's been gutted. They can't use their sink. They can't cook dinner. Like, it's chaos, and it never happens in 6 days. No. It always takes weeks or months, right?
Yeah.
And so there's like the stress point. Like, you have got to acknowledge the chaos while they're just waiting for it to be done. And so for them, I'm like, why don't you send, like a gift basket that's like, hey, here's a movie night on us, or here's some gift cards to go to dinner out on us, right? And what that looks like depends, of course, on the client that you have, and interior, as a type of interior designer that you are.
Right.
If you're a luxury interior designer, you're probably going to do more. If this is not as luxury of a client, right? What you ultimately end up doing may be a little less. It doesn't really matter, but it tells your clients you see them where they are, and that's really important.
Yeah, as you talk, I'm thinking about my own experiences. I got an email today from somebody who's doing helping me with some integrating some AI stuff in, and it was just like, hey, just a busy week, touch base. I'm really busy, but this is where we're at, right? Okay, I didn't need that, but it was nice. And we had our kitchen done last year, and you're absolutely right. It went on. Are we ever going to have a kitchen again?
Same. We did ours last year too. And I just remember thinking, like, from the day they started to the day they finished, I'm like, why did it take this long?
Yeah. Well, a lot of, professional services, creatives, you're selling the invisible, right? I mean, it's, and when I practice law, I'd have clients say, well, this should be pretty easy. You probably have a contract in the file you can just rework. And it's like, yeah, it doesn't work that way, You just don't change a few letters. They're all unique, and you really have to think them through. There is work that needs to be done, but while your car's in the shop or somebody's working, when they're working on your kitchen, you're coming home every day. You're kind of seeing the progress. But for the most part, when the tax returns or the legal work's being done, you're not seeing the fruits of what you're paying for.
Yeah. And here's the thing. We assume stuff is being handled,
Yeah.
right? But at some point, we get to the point where we don't know, right? So
Right.
some of this is managing expectations in terms of how and when you communicate, and other
Right.
times it's showing up with what we would like really think about as something that's more on the relationship side, that's letting them know we get it. Like we totally get it. And we understand that this is what you're going through, because when we're trying to impact how a client feels, it has to be more than the work when there's so many highs and lows to the actual work process.
Yeah. All right. So we've talked about new, we've talked about active alumni.
Yeah, with the alumni, and this is one that gets a lot of people. And this is one I would say that if you feel like if your listeners are listening to this show and they're like, yeah, I don't do anything in the alumni stage, that's actually way more common than I want it to be.
Yeah.
And the thing that people have to overcome, the major pitfall you have to overcome in the alumni stage is you doing a disappearing act.
Yeah.
Because the minute you do a disappearing act, your alumni client does a disappearing act.
Yeah.
And so you can't generate referrals from people who you're actually not staying in some level of communication or relationship with. And then, of course, because if they don't remember you, they can't possibly refer to you. Like I tell a story in the book about this real estate agent. It was the first one I ever used. I was about a year or two in living in Charlotte. I had moved here after college graduation. And I was, moved to Charlotte, renting an apartment, and eventually I decided I wanted to buy a condo. I don't know why I felt the need to do it so young, but I did. And so I tell the story about my parents coming up to check out the couple of condos that my real estate agent and I had decided on. And, as we're going through the process, my real estate agent, like, here, I'm 23 years old. Let's be honest, I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I definitely had my parents, but they lived in another state and they really only came up to kind of give me opinions on A or B, not like anything else through the process. And really, my real estate agent, I relied a lot on her. And she was incredible. And she was amazing. And she walked me through that process. And when my offer was accepted and then the sellers tried to rescind it, she walked me through like dealing with that. Like it was like a whole thing. And I never would have survived without her. But less than a couple years later, I couldn't have told you what her name was.
Mm.
As I didn't remember her. I remembered how I felt, but I didn't remember who she was. I remembered the firm she worked for because they're a well-known company. They've been around forever, but I didn't remember her. So I certainly couldn't have referred her if I wanted to.
Yeah.
And that's the piece that people have to keep in mind is that disappearing act. But we have to be able to take that disappearing act of like staying in touch with people so we don't disappear on them. And we have to be able to like really manage that from what can we do that we can handle, right? That is not a huge logistical lift and that it also recognizes our budget and our budgetary constraints. So it is a balancing act between I don't want to disappear on my alumni clients, but at the same time, I'm not doing any work for them anymore. So I don't have any natural communication points.
Right.
Now I'm having to create them. What does that ultimately look like? And it has a lot to do with the volume of clients entering your alumni stage every year. If you have 12 clients entering your alumni stage every year because you work with around 12 new people a year, that's a low volume lift. But if you've got 1,200 rolling into your alumni stage every year, we're looking at that entirely different.
Yeah. Well, as you're talking, I'm thinking because we're more on the order of magnitude of 1,200. Just people come and they go, and some people go because you want them to go, and some people go because they're mad. And what I probably need to do and to have thinking through this conversation is kind of call the list and say, you know what, I know this person. I know they left because they want to be a stay-at-home mom or they got a promotion, right? And they were otherwise really happy about the experience. So I need to put them on the list and maybe put everybody on the list. And if somebody tells me, hey, take me off the list, fine. So anyhow, let's shift gears here. We're kind of running out of time. Buy the book, The Referable Client Experience, a proven method to generate referrals without asking. It is out. It's on Amazon. Buy the book, but I know you're going to offer people a free chapter if they want. We could put that in the show notes. Buy the book. Come on, people, don't be cheap. It's the holidays are coming. If it's not free, buy the gift for yourself. Buy for somebody in your sphere. But go ahead.
Well, I love you saying that, but I do recognize some people are like, all right, I've not heard of Stacy before, right? So let me kind of dip my toe in before I decide to do the $17.95 or
Right.
whatever. It's going to be less, I guess, if you get the e-reader, maybe more if you get the audiobook. But there is a free chapter that is available that you can go to at referrableclientexperience.com. You can put in your name and your email. We're going to send you a PDF of chapter 4. It's actually one of my favorite chapters. There's a great activity to do within that chapter about expectation mapping with your client so they understand what's coming. It's part of how you nail the new client stage. So if you only decide to get the free chapter, it's a power pack chapter. So I know you'll enjoy that, but hopefully you'll realize that there's probably a lot more to it and I should just buy the book.
Okay. Best way to get a hold of you is through that website as well?
Yep. So the home base for our business is actually my name as the website. It's stacybrownrandall.com. Every book that I have has its own website as well. But if you go to stacybrownrandall.com or if you connect with me on the LinkedIn or Instagram, look for me same way, stacybrownrandall.com. The home base is the best way to learn more about me, my podcast, the books that I have, and of course, how to work with me.
All right. I appreciate you coming on again. That they told you make that one chapter a paragraph, right? I think that's your next book. Because I mean, you didn't write, there's something there. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
There's something there.
Totally right. I agree with you 100%. When we think about my body of work and future books that I have in me, I'm never going to say I have more than 4 because I don't want to make that kind of commitment. But I do think I have a book 3 and a book 4 in me. And I do think in book 4, that will be a much more prevalent part of it.
Yeah. So, well, again, thank you.
Thank you for having me back.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.